Today on Locked On Rockies, Kris Bryant's having a ball.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 17th day of October in the year 2022. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every single day. And if your team's the Colorado Rockies, well, you are in the right place, because that's what we do around here, is we talk about the Colorado Rockies each and every single day, through the season, during the offseason, right here on your favorite streaming service or on YouTube. You can find us live talking Rockies baseball. It's what we like to do. It's what we enjoy to do. So sit back, relax. Let's talk some ball. And we're going to dive into Kris Bryant's kind words for the Rockies and kind of a little bit of a offseason type of topic for you. But on one hand, it's cool that Kris Bryant really likes playing baseball for the Rockies. It's cool that Kris Bryant chose the Rockies out of all the possible teams, and he mentions multiple suitors. He would rather be in Colorado than those places. And of course, with all of that, it's mixed with your team speak. Of course, he's going to speak highly of the team that paid him multiple millions of dollars to only play in 42 baseball games last year, while also being able to enjoy the spoils of being a Major League Baseball player and access to the resources and rehabilitation. There was a piece by Danielle Allentuck over in the Colorado Springs Gazette. I don't know why my mouse isn't allowing me to move here on the page. It's moving on other pages. That's strange. Very weird what just happened there. Anyway, I think there was some sort of an ad that was over it. But anyway, over in the Gazette here from Danielle Allentuck, Kris Bryant loves the Colorado snow. He thinks Coors Field is beautiful and the Rockies training staff is one of the best in the business. As for how he enjoys being an everyday part of the Rockies, well, he can't quite answer that. The Rockies brought Bryant in as their shiny new star, shelling out the richest free agent contract in team history. In year one of a 7-year, $182 million deal, it flopped in their faces. Bryant spent 74% of the Rockies season watching from his designated spot in the dugout next to the pitchers who weren't starting that day and the other injured players. I feel like at times you're more sore just standing there, Bryant told the Gazette from the visitors' dugout at Dodger Stadium. When he did play, the team went only 20-22. This clearly wasn't how it was supposed to go. Bryant, a slugger sought by general manager Bill Smith since 2013, signed with the Rockies a week into the lockout-delayed spring training after some help from manager Bud Black's daughter, who went to college with Bryant's brother-in-law. In the end, it turned out it wasn't a hard sell. The Rockies offered Bryant, 30 years old, a contract that would allow him to coast in one spot until he's 37. Plus, he's already loved Colorado and appreciated the opportunity to be an established big league voice in an inexperienced clubhouse. That part also didn't go as planned. Obviously, it's much easier to lead when you're actually playing, Bryant said. Being a new player here with someone like Charlie and the other veterans, you don't want to step on anyone's toes. Things began to unravel only 2 weeks into the season when he started missing games with back pain. Then came the diagnosis of a lower back strain in the first of 3 stints on the injured list. The team expected him to be ready within his 10 days were up, but he needed 20. I'm going to skip down here. It talks mostly about the injuries, and we won't focus. You can go and read more about that, but I wanted to skip to a quote down here further. It's obviously pretty high, Bryant said of his disappointment. Regardless of the dollar amount or the not playing, I've had the expectations. I know how to deal with it. The disappointment of not playing baseball for a long period of time is at the forefront of my mind because it's all I've done for the past 25 years of my life. If the Rockies had been in playoff contention, Bryant said he could have played the last month of the season, but alas, just like each of the last 3 seasons, they were not. A fact that the Rockies are adamant would have turned out different if the former National League MVP had been available. But there are 6 more years of Bryant in Colorado and at Coors Field, and they are all hopeful a normal offseason for the first time in 3 years will help him stay healthy next year. Not at all, Bryant said when asked if he had any regrets on joining a last place team. Outside of being injured and not playing baseball, this was one of the most fun, enjoyable years of playing baseball that I've had. I look at some of the other suitors I was talking to in the offseason, and there's no way I'd want to be there every day. It's interesting. I mean, I think that is soaked in some friendly player team speak, some friendly player things. But I also think in today's world, athletes are more emboldened than ever to speak out and kind of be on their own profile. Obviously, Kris Bryant doesn't have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing the Rockies or anything because of the fact that he didn't play more than 42 games this season. But it is nice to hear that it's at least something that he views as still a positive, and he does impact the team in a positive way. If a normal offseason can deliver the Rockies a healthy and productive Kris Bryant, then that is going to be a benefit. The Rockies need to see immediate impacts from Kris Bryant being on the field, and it needs to be sustained throughout the season. And the Rockies are going to need to be able to use his leadership in a team that's desperately going to need it with a bunch of new faces coming in. The Rockies can't just be a feel-good, hey, you can come make a lot of money and just hang out in Colorado. The snow's great and it's Colorado. But they can use that to their advantage, and it's clearly a place that is appealing for players to come to. There is obviously all of our issues as Rockies fans, but for the money, the biggest free agent contract the Rockies have ever offered is obviously incentive enough. But if it's incentive enough for the Rockies to bring someone like Kris Bryant in, how much is that if the Rockies are going to be willing to shell out to bring some other people in? I don't believe that this was one of the most fun years he's ever had playing baseball. However, this man is an MVP. This man won the World Series. This man broke the curse in Chicago. I mean, there is just no way a team that was as bad as the Rockies were and underperformed as much as the Rockies did was all that fun. And I think that's part of it where you might have had fun playing for a new crowd for 42 games and in a new environment, and it's a friendlier media space when it comes to the Rockies versus a place like Chicago. But be honest, I would rather Kris Bryant. I mean, I'm glad he had fun, but there needs to be more of an in-depth reality of what it's like for someone to go through this. What does this mean for Kris Bryant going forward? How is he adjusting? What does a real regular offseason truly mean for Kris Bryant? I mean, I'm glad he doesn't regret coming to the Rockies, but to sit here and say that it was one of the most fun years that you've ever had playing baseball, when you've won the MVP, when you've won it all, and when you've been on it, when you helped completely reshape the mindset, the identity, the reputation, an organization like the Chicago Cubs, I have a hard time believing that you really enjoyed the the over 30 games out of the division lead, terrible on the road, 3 different stints on the injured list season that you just experienced. I just don't think that is necessarily what you are actually is going through Kris Bryant's mind. I'd really like to know what Kris Bryant. I want to know what Kris Bryant really thinks about the Rockies, and I will explain more about what that means in just a second. But before we do that, the numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because you hear all of these great reviews from SimpliSafe. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. With 24/7 professional monitoring, SimpliSafe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Our monitoring experts use proprietary advanced response technology to visually confirm when a break-in is real, so you can get the highest priority police dispatch. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb to learn more. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. We're talking Kris Bryant here, and I know I haven't done a lot of our player rankings. We'll get back into that here soon, but there's just been kind of some interesting stuff with baseball and kind of more Rockies philosophy. I kind of like to have been thinking about it when I've been getting ready to do the shows and handle the shows. But I want to really know what Kris Bryant feels like about playing with the Colorado Rockies. I mean, I'm glad he thinks the training staff is top notch. I'm glad to hear he's frustrated by not playing a lot of games, but that's obvious. What was the true reasons to come to this team? I mean, outside of a smart career move, most likely for yourself, I'd really like to know what Kris Bryant saw that makes Colorado a better place to be right now, a place that fans aren't enjoying being in this place, and a place where we have seen turmoil. We've seen lack of identity. We've seen lack of commitment. We've seen lack of results as well. I don't know. I mean, all of it is just, maybe I'm diving too deep into just a simple end of the season interview when things didn't go well. All the quotes are safe. There's really nothing wrong with what Kris Bryant has to say. I mean, and how he might really truly feel all this stuff about the Rockies. He came here for a reason, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, what made the Rockies a better suitor? Why are you sitting here now feeling like you've had more fun and you feel better about being with Colorado than any of those other teams? Because there are really very few teams I can pinpoint and think about that might be having a worse time than the Rockies. And I would say it's like Detroit and Cincinnati and maybe Kansas City. I don't even know. I haven't followed the Royals enough or know enough about the Royals. The A's perhaps as well are teams. Minnesota, for just the fact that things haven't panned out, but they've had success. So I don't really necessarily know if Minnesota is the case. But you telling me you'd rather be in Colorado than in San Francisco this offseason? I don't believe it. San Francisco might have underperformed this year, but San Francisco is a team that has shown incredible resilience of bouncing back and getting back into competitiveness and getting the most out of players later in their career. Look what happened last year. I know there was some turnover and stuff there as well, but you're telling me you'd rather be in Colorado than San Francisco, than New York, than back with the Cubs? I really don't believe that. And that's where I would like to just see kind of more of the athlete come out. But there is a tremendous opportunity here for Kris Bryant to step into an interesting role. If Kris Bryant can contribute with a positive WAR and help this offense score runs, he is going to be, like we talked about when he first came in, the mentor for these young guys. It's going to be a good resource for young baseball players to have in their locker room every single day, a guy that has won a championship, not only a championship, but a championship for a team that was desperate for it, that really wanted it, and that changed. I mean, that World Series championship for the Cubs was so important, and it was such a big deal for all of those players who were involved in it, because that was a monumental shift in the culture and the identity and how people view the Cubs. Now it's more realistic. The big curse is broken, and Kris Bryant being a part of that that experience is going to help the Rockies, because who knows? Baseball's weird, and we'll talk about the weirdness of baseball and why it's great here in a little bit, but this is the right guy. He's an MVP. He's been at the highest point of the game. He's done the best. I mean, Kris Bryant getting a good deal and coast until he's 37 after getting these accolades is a good move for him as a person. And hopefully, on top of being able to contribute to the offense and a little bit of defense as well, he's going to be someone that's going to make sure that the young players These ones with promise and potential understand what it takes to be the best and to compete, to tell people what it takes. If the Rockies get in the playoffs with young players and Kris Bryant's there's your postseason experience right there. There's the stuff you got to lean on to be able to go in and use some of that experience, which is critical and crucial to baseball. The one thing that was nice and big about the Rockies being able to bring someone like Kris Bryant in is he's walked the walk. Even if the Rockies side of his career doesn't pan out and it hasn't panned out as of year one, there's no way that you can sit here and say that Kris Bryant didn't reach the highest levels of the game, and that experience is valuable. And that's not only going to, I think there's a ton of potential still for Kris Bryant. As long as people aren't sitting here, especially Rockies fans, expecting Kris Bryant to just be an MVP all the time. If Kris Bryant is just in the top 10 of all offensive categories next year, I'm happy. Top 10. If he could be one of the top 10 hitters in baseball next year, that would be massive for the Colorado Rockies. So I'm glad to hear that he is excited and passionate about being a Rocky. It's good for the PR for the team. It's good for bringing in other free agents to this team. And it's interesting. So I got to say, I know it's a kind of just more philosophy. Maybe I'm diving too far into some stuff, but I think there is a lot to take away when you listen and kind of dive into what are the possibilities there with what Kris Bryant was saying. Like I said, a lot more in that piece that I did not cover from Danielle Allentuck there. Rockies Kris Bryant has no regrets after year one in Colorado there with the Gazette. So if you want to check out more of that, you can go and read the full piece there. I want to talk about the playoff structure, and there was a lot of people squawking over the weekend, but I want to talk about that right after this. Folks, we got some folks in the live chat here. Angel17 says, I think Kris Bryant will have a bounce back year in 2023. And Eric Harper says, top 10 hitter would be pleasantly shocking. And I mean, it would take a lot to get there. There's a lot of great hitters in baseball. And after a year off, sure. But what type of motto does that set for the Rockies and their new approach to hitting? If a new hitting coach can come in for the Rockies and get Kris Bryant to be a top 10 hitter in the league. Top 10. Again, that's what we're asking for. That's a really good sign for Rockies coaching, the organization, and the direction of the team. If under a new hitting coach, the Rockies are able to get Kris Bryant into the top 10 as a batter this next season. He's 30. He's going to be a little older, but there's plenty of people that can still swing it. He's going to have course field. The shift is going to be eliminated. There's a lot of bounce back potential going on there as well. And I think the hitting coach thing will be really interesting. And we'll talk more about that. I think with some of these topics, we're going to have to bring in some guests here, and hitting coach is going to be one thing we're definitely going to need to reach out and talk to some folks about. But there was people complaining about how the playoffs work in baseball, and I gotta say I have zero issues with. I think this is the best baseball format there is, and you can say your one thing about expanded playoffs. Yes, I get that 100%, but expanded playoffs are good for the overall product. It's better for more teams to make it, and it's more exciting for markets to have an opportunity to go for the runs. Now, baseball themselves are going to reevaluate this because they are going to be pissed that teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Cardinals, all of their cash grab money hogs, except for the Yankees, are all eliminated from the playoffs as of the recording of this playoffs. But that's exactly why baseball playoffs rule. It doesn't matter if you're 111 win Dodgers, you have to match up against a team that you played a ton, mind you, in the division, the Padres, a team that you mock. And all this stuff, and if there's a case for canceling the playoffs and just awarding a championship to a team, it should be this year. No. The Dodgers should be good enough to beat any team in a 5-game series. The Dodgers should be good enough to beat any team in a best of 1. The Dodgers should be good enough to beat any team in a best of 7. You are supposed to be the best. If you really want to be the best in the business in baseball, why I believe the World Series is arguably the hardest professional major sport title to win, is because you have to be the best all summer and you have to be the best all fall. And people will say, well, you don't have to be the best all summer. That's the, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. You still have to be proactive. You cannot just bank on this. Why do you have to? What is the best? The best at bouncing back, the best at handling adversity. Teams that do well in the playoffs, how many times do we see things where it's, oh man, they were blah, blah, blah out of the race and this is what they finished with. That's a good team. It doesn't matter if a good team eliminates a slow start. A good player like Brendan Rodgers eliminates a slow start. You can eliminate the slow start. But when you are heralded as one of the best teams ever, when you're the Braves and you win 100 games, when you are the Cardinals with 2 MVPs on your team, when you're the Mets with the new payroll and some of the best pitchers, I don't care. That's ample opportunities. I think that it's not what baseball wanted, but it's how it panned out. You need to beat anybody and everybody to be considered the best. To win the championship, you need to handle any situation and beat them. And the Dodgers have not been able to finish the job. They might have the best teams. They might have the best regular seasons. They might have deep playoff runs. They might come up just short. But being bounced by the Padres in the division series is a wake-up call. Because guess what? That's a sign that teams like the Rockies just need to make the dance. You need to be good enough to make the dance, and then you can try to tango with anybody. And that rules. And now, if you're the Rockies had to imagine the Rockies. I mean, Cubs fans could be saying the same thing. Imagine if the Rockies and the Cubs actually had to play a full season. Imagine actually getting opportunities for playoff baseball in Colorado. It's awesome. Those wild card games were awesome. Most of the division series games have been, if not all of them, have been awesome. It is just absolutely, absolutely something they got to do. And so I am all for the new playoff structure. And if you are supposed to be the best team, you should be able to beat teams in a best of 3, a best of 5, and a best of 7. And if you got to adjust to that waiting period, well, guess what? No one showed any sympathy in 2007 when the Rockies whooped the butts of everyone and had to wait around. And they often forget about that and only talk about how good that Red Sox team was. So if everyone's going to ignore how big of a deal the rest period was for the Rockies, I'm going to keep ignoring the rest period for all this other stuff, because it is also the playoffs. You're also good teams. It's baseball. I mean, it is just absolutely the whining from big market teams when their teams lost and the complaining about playoff structure. Give me a break. You got to go through the ringer like everybody else. You don't get all the special attention because of just regular season alone. You still have to show up. You still have to compete. You still have to take on the teams. Guess what? It's not the shakeup of the playoffs that had these major upsets. And Tanner asked, how do I feel about the Phillies facing the Padres? Awesome. I think it's great, because those are two teams that bought in different ways, and a team that fired their manager at one point in the year. MLB wanted Dodgers Mets, you know that. But guess what? They blew it. And that's sports. That's awesome. It is absolutely the case. I mean, it's you got to show up in every opportunity. That's why winning the championship is so hard. That's why playoff runs are so special in baseball, because you still have to win. You got to win those series. You have 3 series you got to win if you're a wild card team. Or was it 4 series you got to win if you're a wild card team? 3 if you are a division team. You already get to skip 1. You already skipped 3 games. Doesn't matter. The Dodgers the Dodgers were better than the Padres, and they should have beat them. The Mets had no business getting knocked out. The Cardinals had no business getting knocked out. The Astros hung on by the skin of their teeth. They'll sit and tout and say that they did all they swept if you watched that series, the days of the Astros dominance in the AL West are numbered, and it's awesome. That's what I like the upset. I think baseball playoffs are more interesting this year because it's not those teams. Because I'm way more interested in a Phillies Padres DS than I am these big old the big markets than Dodgers, Mets. But it would have been great baseball. I would have appreciated it. Absolutely. But I definitely wanted Mariners guards. I could tell you that for sure as well. And just to see the copium that all the big markets were drinking after the elimination of the team. Let's dive in the live chat here before we wrap things up here. Stephen Cross says Rockies need to bring back the Blake Street Bomber formula. I'm glad they let Maggot and Doe. It was needed. I would love to see them go get someone that understands the home road splits. Yeah, one of the hardest things is going to be navigating the splits, but new opportunities, new pastures, and again, what does Kris Bryant's return mean for the Rockies offense there? Cross adds, the most exciting time in Rockies history was arguably the Blake Street Bomber age. Yet, yes, pitching is important. However, nowadays teams are not afraid anymore to come to Coors. And I was too young to really fully appreciate Blake Street Bomber, so I might be wrong. And of course, new team, and they were good. Rocktober was incredible. But when you were the most excited about that team, it was 17-19. I mean, really up until things went wrong in 19. You were pumped about the state of this team and confident because the Rockies in 18 and 17, at the end of 17 and because it was 17 and 18 were the playoffs, 19 was the best. So from the end of 16, 17 and 18, 19, that 4-year chunk where the Rockies were with the way their infield was and the performances they were getting from their pitchers, for me, that was the most exciting point in Rockies history, at least as of now. Tanner Cruz says, how do you feel about the Phillies facing the Padres? We already answered that. And if the Yankees lose, does Judge leave them? Judge only leaves the Yankees if someone gives him close to the amount of money the Yankees give him and more years. I have again said, if you're willing to dive in, if you're willing to go crazy, the Rockies should go after Judge, but that won't be the case. But Judge will be a Yankee as long as the Mets. There are teams that will try to match, but I think Judge really likes Yankee Stadium, and I think he wants to be Mr. Yankee, Mr. Next Derek Jeter, and I think after this season he has the ability to do that. Stephen Cross says we need to win 50 to 55 games at home if we want to be a potential playoff team. Absolutely, winning at home needs to be a strength for the Rockies always. One of the big issues this year, like we said, was home winning percentage and home performance. We had a whole show about that towards the end of the year. Sure, it won't be the last time we talk about it as well. And let's see. Stephen Cross says it's hard to say, but I think we win the 2007 World Series if we avoided the long break. The Rockies at least don't get swept, and I agree. That's the homer in me. It'll always be my homer take, but I think the Rockies were playing incredible baseball, and the fact that they had to wait so long before playing a team that had to fight back and a team that really did have a lot of weapons. The Rockies would have made it at least a series and not have gotten swept if that was the case. And man, if you go back, Todd Helton was killer in the World Series. But folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Really great fan interaction today. Angel Harper, Angel 7, I said Angel Harper, Angel 17, Eric Harper, Stephen Cross, Tanner Crew, all in the live chat today. If you subscribe to Locked On Rockies on YouTube, you'll know when we go live if you hit that little bell, and you can join into the chat and ask your questions. Makes the offseason a heck of a lot more fun when I got to talk to you, the Rockies fans out here. Now that you made Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day, go make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day. Sully's got to keep you up to date with all things in the Major League Baseball universe. And, of course, stay up to date with a very busy time in Colorado sports. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Nuggets podcast coming your way each and every single day as well. You can follow me at Paul Holden 33 on Twitter. You can follow the show at LO Rockies. I know the Twitter's a little quiet right now in the off season, but don't you worry. We'll be back in action soon. And of course, your subscription on YouTube means the world. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On